Welcome, savvy investors, to another YouTube channel and actually Facebook Live. We're actually doing a combination today since it's kind of early afternoon and West Coast time. People are just getting back from work. So we thought we'd kind of mix it up a little bit and do this both on our Facebook channel as well as our YouTube channel. So welcome. We've got another great training session ahead of us. And for those of us that don't know who I am, my name is Mike Pawnee. I'm the founder of Savvy Investor and longtime Canadian real estate investor. And very, very excited about today's discussion. And it's specifically for those that are wanting to kind of scale their business and even more so pivoting some different investment strategies. Let's be honest, for us investors right now, times have been a little bit challenging. It's harder to find deals in this day and age. Maybe the markets aren't as good as what they once were. And don't get me started with those tenancy boards, if you understand what I'm saying, right? So for those that know what I mean, you know exactly what I mean. So for a lot of you, things have gotten obviously a little bit challenging, but for today's discussion, it's really about how do we scale and then maybe in some cases pivot some of our investment strategies in this type of climate. And it can be really, really challenging. And so for those that are joining us today, again, say hello. Just let me know where you guys are dialing from. Great to see you, Lillian. Thanks for joining in. For those of you that are struggling with scaling your business or even nervous about scaling your business, let us know if that's you, or maybe you're a little bit nervous about pivoting to a completely different investment strategy altogether. And that could be also yourself as well. So if that sounds like you, just type in the comments. Love to hear kind of what you guys are challenged with in this day and age. And I'm truly, truly honored to bring our special guest, Mr. Andrew Hines, to share a little bit about his investing journey, learn how he's been able to help kind of grow and scale his business. And one of the things I thought was kind of neat when I, got a chance to learn a little bit about Andrew is he's actually gotten into the glamping business as well, which I look forward to kind of digging a little bit deeper on as well. And so for those that may have heard of Andrew Hines, and it sounds a little bit familiar, he's got an amazing podcast that's out there, the Andrew Hines Real Estate Investing Podcast, and have some incredible speakers talking about all aspects when it comes to real estate investing, as well as sharing his real estate investing journey as well. So again, if you haven't checked him out on his podcast, I highly encourage you to do so. And again, for me, I'm really looking forward to this discussion and to learn more a little bit about what he's been focusing on and how he's been able to scroll, diversify, pivot, and also at the same time, scale his real estate business as well. So with that being said, this is technically a YouTube Facebook Live. For those that are watching us on Facebook, let us know if you're on Facebook or on YouTube. Make sure if you haven't done so already, go to our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, follow us there because we have regular weekly YouTube Lives, free training for all of our savvy investors to help support you guys in your investing journey. So make sure, give us the thumbs up, hit that notification bell, and also hit that subscribe button. So without further ado, I want to get to the topic at hand. And most importantly, I want to introduce our guest speaker, Mr. Andrew Hines, to join us to the Savvy Investor YouTube channel. Welcome, Andrew, and thanks for joining us. I really appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Great. Now, for those that don't necessarily know you, you're very active on social media and you've got great podcasts and everything that's associated with that. But for those that don't necessarily know who you are, Andrew, maybe you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit about who you are, share a little bit about your real estate investing journey. And again, we got followers and people that are watching from all over North America. So it'd be very interesting for you to share with our community who you are. So,
yeah, as far as investing goes, I started back in 2011 and I bought a couple of single family homes in London, Ontario, quickly ran out of money. Took my skills to Ohio, or lack thereof, and bought some cheaper houses, and just got in over my head, not knowing what I didn't know. And it took some time to kind of come to that realization. And it cost me some money too, but these houses were pretty cheap back then. So I continued doing stuff in London, Ontario. I eventually took a shot at development and tried to build a duplex, and this is at a time where that was not popular, nor even really being allowed. So I actually had like a whole community gang up on me, made the front page of the newspaper as this big bad Toronto developer. Meanwhile, I lived around the corner. So I was learning lessons as I went. And it wasn't until 2015 where I sort of hit my stride, investing in student rentals, buying them, rehabbing them, adding additions, and then renting them out as purpose-built homes that are specifically geared towards students. And one thing led to another. I eventually ended up actually building those and selling them as turnkey investments to investors. So I started a company to do that. Did that for a few years while it worked, and once the numbers went away and kind of got a little bit more expensive for inventory, I ended up just focusing more on the media that I was doing, my existing portfolio, my construction business, which I also sort of fell into unintentionally because of the renovations I was doing on my own properties. So I ended up building new construction, townhomes, multifamily kind of stuff, and now single family homes in that company. Um, More recent years, I've gotten into investing in glamping, as you said, uh,
Mm,
seeing what I wanted to see as a sort of typical landlord, and I haven't for many years. I know a lot of people have been hot on it for the last few prior to the interest rates coming up. I wasn't very pleased with what I was seeing for many years before that because I had memories of 2015 in my head when you could buy a house in London, Ontario for 200 grand,
yeah.
4 wide, 150 deep, that kind of thing, in an 8 or maybe even 1,000 square foot bungalow. So things drastically changed, and obviously you got to pivot when that happens.
Yeah.
But it's tough when you look back at what you used to be able to get, and to think about taking the exact same, maybe making the same margin, but now the cash flow is not as good, and you're taking more risks. So those are some of the things I was dealing with. So more recently, as I said, I got into the glamping business because I thought it was something I could scale. We could really leverage that Airbnb business side of
Yeah.
so many people were doing, but do it with commercial zoning, do it in a way that we could just keep adding more and more units without actually having to get building permits, without having to do a lot of different things, because it was all within the existing zoning on the same property.
Yeah.
And so we're doing tents, trailers, all that stuff. And then also the Florida stuff. I've been doing some new construction development in Cape Coral, Florida, sort of working while the margins were working. And they've been squeezed more recently too. So pivoting yet again, but that's the business we're in.
Very cool stuff. Like, I think this is kind of interesting. It's just like, especially in this environment that we're living in, I think you've identified a few different things is pivoting because, when the markets aren't necessarily cooperating in your favor, sometimes you have to make some adjustments. So maybe I can ask you a question is like student rentals, land development, new construction, multifamily, you got your glamping business as well. What kind of dictated, what was there specific milestones or specific things that made you pivot from one strategy to another completely? Was there anything that resonated that's like, I need to make this adjustment now?
Um, I'm not, people have this fear of like the shiny object syndrome. I
Yeah.
definitely don't think I have that. I'm pretty patient. I hear good ideas every single day. I
Yeah.
more pivot out of being forced to pivot. So, I mean, I probably waited too long in London. I waited
Yeah.
too long to get back in. And sometimes it's me just forcing myself. Okay. It's, because I didn't really feel a need, right? Like, obviously, there's a lot of investors out there just crushing it. I didn't feel a lot of urgency with my student rental portfolio to make
Right.
a change because, they were cash flowing. They were nice, like they were easy to manage, all that. But I felt that it was difficult to grow, and that was
Right.
one of the biggest things I was struggling with. And when I started the podcast, I was hoping to increase the network and kind of the people I knew and get better ideas. And when I had those ideas, act on them. And I'm very much that mindset. I want to act on good ideas. So I wouldn't say I've abandoned things completely. I still have my construction company. We still do that. I'm still totally open to getting back into student rentals. What I more realized is that I don't really want to plan to grow in Ontario. Like I
Mm,
don't like the landlord laws here. I think that it's cash flow is a lot tougher to come by. It's not that it's impossible, but
right.
if you had to pick a place to grow, I quickly realized during the lockdowns and such that I really didn't want to be at the mercy of quote unquote Canada, and I didn't want to have all my eggs in this basket. So that was where the U.S. focus came in, and then of course the glamping thing, like that's a simultaneous strategy. That I just saw an opportunity, right? And we kind of escape all those landlord laws. It's commercial. It's a very, very different environment doing what we're
Yeah.
doing there. And it's extremely unique what we're able to do, which you couldn't do it if you owned a home. You wouldn't necessarily have the zoning that lets you put up a tent in the backyard and rent it out on Airbnb. But on our campsite, we do.
That's pretty cool. So maybe I can ask you a question is you've adapted some different strategies, even some different markets in entirety. And I think you've alluded to some of the reasons of leaving. It's just kind of like, you know what, we needed to make the change. Didn't like some of the tenancy rules that were there. Is there a specific strategy that you are focusing on? Is it just the glamping business? Do you still do new construction? If you went to just say, what is your strategy? And I guess what's the reason, why are you focused on one strategy versus another? And the second part to that question is, how are you scaling that part of your business? Like even the glamping piece, it's an interesting business. I'm quite intrigued to hear more about this. And how are you growing, scaling? Are you using money partners, private lenders? So there's a few
Yeah.
parts to that question. What's your kind of
Yeah.
maybe ideal investment strategy? And how are you scaling and growing this part of your business?
So as you know, I hear a lot of great ideas. I mean, I'm interviewing people all the time. What I know of that works right now from people I network with, interview, and what I do myself. I would say the top strategies are, of course, Airbnb, namely arbitrage. I think that there's some people I'm pretty close with that are doing exceptionally well with that. That was always a consideration for me. I've kind of sat on the sidelines with that, have not yet made a move onto that. But that's I look at like what are the top now money strategies I see, and that's one of the top ones I see consistently coming up. Another one I see is this land flipping concept, which I had a guy on my podcast not too long ago doing that. And that is something I'm already set up in Florida. So as I'm pivoting some money out of Cape Coral, I am actually dedicating some money to that. So going to be generating some off market leads and really trying to make more money on the buy. And I think we're in a season of needing to make more money on the buy. Being able to force appreciation in a declining market is not a game I really want to play. Yep. So to scale, you need proof of concept, right? You need to show people that you can be successful. I'm big on money partners now. However, you might do that. You can do joint ventures. You can do just promissory notes, loans. You can do a GP/LP structure. So that's also in my future. I mean, as far as promissory notes, that's been the most common. If I'm raising money, I've funded quite a bit of what I've done in Florida through money I've raised in Canada through just my network. Yeah. Same thing, any sort of short-term need, we'll use promissory notes. Right. We'll find them one way or another. And, trying to do it, keeping within close circles because of all the securities laws with that and the exemptions. But now with our camp, we're looking to do this more formally. So we're actually just investigating how we go about starting a mutual fund trust, doing our offering memorandum, because we see the glamping business and our hospitality business in general as being something that we can scale quite significantly, and we could do it a lot faster if we brought in investors. So that's where we want to go with it. We want to build out the team. This year we got up to 9 people. And nice. we want to push that even further, bring in more operational management for the company as a whole. Like we have our site management, but we also want to bring under the umbrella our other site, which we purchased this year. It's a cottage resort on the water in Tobermory, and run the two as part of the same company and expand them significantly. So there's a lot of irons in the fire right now, and a big part of this scaling and growing thing is being able to build a team. And that's been probably the biggest single shift for me mentally since my son was born about almost 2 years ago now, was realizing I couldn't do everything myself. And I needed to, wherever I saw myself doing something that I could explain that task, I had to bring somebody in and explain that task to them and then hand it to them. So I've really stepped away from the doing, and I've shifted more to the explaining. And I save my focus for strictly that which can help me grow further.
Yeah, love it. Actually, it's actually a question I had for you is, one of the things I was watching is like, you've gone through all these different strategies, land development, student rentals, new construction, the glamping business as well. And you just referenced this as building your team and expanding your team. And maybe how did you approach this again with some of these different concepts? How did you approach building and managing your team, and as you're kind of scaling this? But like, these are different people in a lot of cases than what you would normally just do. And so for people that are considering pivoting or changing their strategy or different markets, this is something people have to take into consideration, is the people that they are currently hired or working with may not be the same people that you're going to be doing in this next venture for yourself. So how do you manage building and growing a team, not just in a different strategy, but in different markets in its entirety?
Well, the big thing is starting with the internal team, I think. think about all the things you do in a week that maybe you could have somebody else do. And I'm not saying you specifically, but any of the audience here.
Yep.
I can count all the things I would do. I mean, I'd be filing stuff into QuickBooks. I'd be sending emails on trivial things, calling the electric company, calling, some random email I got that wasn't even relevant to my business, and it steals time from my day. So, for one of the most critical hires I did was my personal virtual assistant, and she's been with me since I hired her. Almost year and a half, more than a year and a half ago. And she does so much for me. She, like I do weekly payables every Thursday. She gives me the list, because the one thing I didn't really hand off, she's in my inboxes and everything. The one thing I haven't really handed off is actual execution of payment. And she will just put everything in a nice, neat little package with all the payment instructions, who I need to pay how much, all this stuff. So I can just go through, and inside of hopefully if everything's there, 20 minutes, half an hour, I'm done. And then I send her all the, transaction copies. She takes care of it from there. So just kind of getting rid of all the things that I used to do, any sort of calls outbound, waiting on hold, blah, 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 all that stuff gone. Getting into my inbox and responding to people. I'm big on voice memos. We use WhatsApp. If I have something to do, if I can explain it, I just record a voice memo while I'm driving or whatever. So that was the biggest thing. So now all of a sudden, I got a whole big chunk of time back. Now that's time I can spend on thinking about what's the next step? How do I grow from here? And, another big hire, I always had help with my podcast. I shouldn't say always. I started it by myself, but for the past several years, I've had some degree of help, but not enough. And I've been constantly looking for, I spend a lot of time on the media side. How can I delegate more of this? And, delegate the posting, delegate the social media posting, because honestly, I find these things bother me. Like posting things on stories and making posts. I don't know, maybe it's just me. I don't like it. I don't mind sitting here and recording the content. I don't want to do anything else when it comes to that stuff. And it's not that I don't like talking to people. I love it when people message me and I connect with them, and I do that myself. One of my social media assistant is in my inbox on Instagram and such, but I still do go in there and talk to people.
Good.
So yeah, it's just, again, now buying back more time. Okay, so now what am I doing on a daily basis, weekly basis? I'm doing camp meetings. We're talking to the management. We're talking to lawyers about how we scale, about, who's the exempt market dealer we're going to work with. So the more things I can delegate, now the higher I can think. And that's really, really how I've been approaching this for the past year and a half. Before that, I was really kind of playing more small. And I decided not to do that anymore. But I do feel that building your team is a very buzzwordy concept to a lot of people. Oh yeah, building my team. I've got my contractor. I got my accountant. No, I mean, you actually take a risk on somebody. You actually put them on your payroll. You are now responsible for them, but they're the next step for you. And they're what separates the adults from the children, so to speak. And I don't mean to slight anybody with that. I'm just saying I was there. I wasn't taking myself nearly seriously enough. Yeah. And my son was the big catalyst to say, oh, wow, this just does not work. I want to watch my son grow up. I want to go home and be home for dinner. He eats at 4:30, so I'm going to miss that tonight. But, I want to be there for him. And that was the biggest thing that just, I had to delegate everything. And I've noticed, even in my construction business, I brought on an old friend and I taught him operations management within my construction business. I no longer do probably 95% of what I used to do in my construction business, because I handed it to him. And yes, there's a cost associated with all these things, but now I'm also seeing new opportunities and finding new ways to earn income. So it's a combination. But I'd say the biggest investments I've made recently are in myself and in my team. And it might not necessarily show as a net worth increase, but it will.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. And it's one of those things that it is a little bit of a leap of faith, especially for people that are just getting, I would say getting started, but they're in their business today. But hiring a virtual assistant to take away some of that administrative stuff, it just frees up so much of your time to be focusing on other things that you can help grow and scale your business. And I liked your comment is just you gotta, it's kind of like putting your big boy pants on. Now you need to bring somebody on to help assist you with some of this stuff, because if you're trying to take all of this all on your own, it's going to be very, very difficult to scale your business. It's too challenging. And so now you have to kind of take those next leaps of faith. It is a risk, but the benefit can be very substantial, at freeing up your time and just making you a lot more effective in your own business. So,
And
yeah.
I really feel like today, like you've got all these, real estate investors that used to just be able to buy a property and in their side business, kind of, so to
Yeah.
speak, and it would go up in value. And even if they made horrible mistakes, they still won. Well, since those days are over now, apparently, um,
Mhm.
I think that there's going to be a bigger shift towards, of course, a whole bunch of people just not even doing real estate investing
I
anymore, which
agree.
I'm already seeing signs of, and maybe you
Yeah.
are too.
Same. Yeah.
The people that used to think it was sexy and listen to my podcast are kind of gone. Like it's only the serious ones that are still around, which is kind of cool in a way. Because like at our meetups and stuff, yes, they're smaller, but the people who come out are great conversations. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed. So we just got a kind of a comment here from one of our
yeah.
people that are watching and saying the same thing. Is just, hiring a VA was just made a huge difference in their
Mhm.
life. And again, it for the cost associated with this, again, it's not that much of an investment. But I'll
Mhm.
tell you, for those people that are actually starting to grow and expand their business and they're feeling like they're overwhelmed, in some cases, and you may have felt like this too, Andrew, is when you started to grow your business and scale your business, it became almost like another full-time job in itself. And you're just like,
Mhm.
why did I got into this game to kind of get more time with my kids and my family and stuff,
Mhm.
and it's actually not doing the complete opposite of that. And this is exactly what you're highlighting, is scaling your business to actually be more like a business and bringing in some of the right people to help associate with that. So thanks for the
Yeah.
comment, guys. I appreciate that. So can I ask you a question, Andrew? It's specifically on some of the things that you've highlighted in kind of pivoting, and it goes right back to some of the discussions that you had, and we're talking about this. The markets haven't been very. I'm in Vancouver too, right? So we're seeing this similar feel as what we're seeing in Ontario. I'm actually, this may be even a perfect time to kind of pull this right up here right now. Is I'll just quickly share this just so everybody can see. This is fresh off the press, and it's just this kind of feedback. Just Greater Vancouver home sales drop in September as higher rates bite. And again, this is just clickbait at the end of the day, and there's some
Mhm.
substance to this as well. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of fear and concern in the marketplace. I'm sure you're seeing that too. I talk to people kind of on a daily basis. Everybody's
Mhm.
kind of in a panic mode. Is there anything specific for you that kind of triggered a realization to pivot from your business? And what were some of those things that made you make that decision to, again, go down to Florida, made the decisions like, Toronto's not necessarily working for me anymore. And again, to be very clear,
Mhm.
I'm not knocking Toronto. I'm not knocking Vancouver. There's opportunities everywhere. But I'm just highlighting based on some of the things that we're kind of seeing in the market. So was there anything specifically that triggered change, or was it just because you saw different or better opportunities doing other things?
Yeah, I would say that the lockdowns were the first thing. As soon as I saw what the Canadian government was capable of, Ontario government, all that stuff, the way they did everything, it just made me realize, oh wow, okay, like Canada's gone away, because they had the hearts and minds of the people with what they did,
Right.
and I started to realize that there was a bit of a problem there from a risk standpoint to have all my eggs in that basket. Like say I'm in student rentals, they can shut down the school. Well, how long are kids going to, their parents going to pay rent when their kids can't go to school?
Yeah.
That never actually became a problem. But I did have students say, hey, my mom won't pay rent anymore. I'm leaving. We'll find a replacement. I started to realize I was a bit exposed. And that was
Right.
like an alarm bell for me. I realized if they did this again, you know, the actual demand for student rentals could go down. And my student rentals didn't transition well to be family homes. They were very purpose built, bathrooms in every single bedroom, very, very purpose built for that use. And because of that, I just realized, hey, that's not the hill I'm going to die on. I'm going to get out while the getting's good. The numbers were good. I would be up. I mean, yes, I was cash flowing, and I had never intended to sell them. But once I realized that that was the type of thing that was possible in Ontario, my mindset about student rentals changed a bit, and my
Yeah.
concentration was high in student rentals. That was kind of my bulk of my net worth. So I decided to liquidate that, even though there was tax consequences to doing so. And I wanted to get some money out of the country. I wanted to get some money in a place where it was more freedom oriented, more lower government control. And I'm not saying Florida totally checks those boxes, because in some weird ways, it's actually more regulated than Ontario.
Mm,
But
interesting.
uh, generally speaking, I saw that that would be a good way to just sort of hedge myself a little bit, hedge some of that risk. But I really felt some urgency there. When I saw what could happen in Ontario, I felt urgency to
Mm,
just start selling everything. And across 2001, I sold all the student rentals. And then this year, I sold the remainder of my portfolio in Ontario, except for the hospitality stuff. And I've just basically made most of that money available. I was building, several houses with that down in Florida. So those were the big things that caused me to pivot. And then more recently with what I was doing at Cape Coral, the big cause to pivot was just looking at, okay, I'm done these projects. I have investor money out. It's very expensive. And am I going to return that capital to the investor, or am I going to sink it into a new project? And when I was looking at my expected return, it was just far too marginal. It was, really, maybe we're looking at a 15 to 25 grand profit on a house, and that's if everything works out great. Well, what if something comes up, we need extra sand fill, or there's an unknown cost in the construction? For me, those numbers just aren't good enough. Those just aren't good enough, and it's not worth the risk. So I saw, because of that, and that was one of the better opportunities I was seeing more recently, without being super active on the lead gen side. I basically just decided, okay, well, it's time to get far more active about the deals I have coming in the door. And that's when I ended up kind of learning more about this land flipping concept, and just decided, hey, you know what, I'm okay dedicating some money to that, seeing how it goes in Florida, since I'm already set up there, and take it from there.
Perfect. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. So let me ask you now, we're all intrigued to hear about your glamping business. So maybe you
Mhm.
can share a little bit about what that is, what made you get into that kind of space, and just give us some kind of ideas of, what made you go from kind of like, again, student rentals to a glamping business. And for some people, what is a glamping business? So
Yeah, so the glamping business is a super cool concept. My wife had always shown me the little like Instagram posts and Airbnb listings of tree houses that were for rent, and we saw some people that had done glamping tents elsewhere, maybe in Canada, but more so in the States, where you've got a big tent, 16 foot, in diameter, and it would be queen bed in it, all kinds of nice decorations. And what we decided to do, based on this knowledge, like I was looking at Airbnb because I saw how much Airbnb was making during the lockdowns and such.
yeah,
And everybody who didn't have a cottage wanted one.
yeah,
So we were looking at cottages, but I just knew I couldn't scale that. Like if I have one house with, on one lot, that's one rental unit. And I was saying to my brother-in-law, Jake, I'm like, boy, wouldn't it be nice if you could just get like an apartment building or something where you could scale it, something where it's not just one, you can actually grow
yeah,
that. And then
yeah.
like within a week, he brings me a campground. He's like, hey, check this out. And it's like 40 minutes north of like an area where my brother-in-law had a cottage.
Cool.
And we just thought, oh, wow, like think about it. Like if we can get a tent to generate 20 grand, or if we didn't even know, or like 15 grand, what could it do? We had no idea. We knew we could do something though. We were thinking, well, if a cottage can do 45 grand in a year, surely our tent, at $100 a night could do X. So we ran some very conservative projections. And we were pleasantly surprised in our first year at what the limited product we got up did. I think we finished the first year with 7 listings, and we started with 2 that year. And we didn't even get those listings up till the end of June. And I think we did like somewhere around 16,000 on those 2 each.
Wow.
Yeah, so we ran the camping business, and then we also ran the glamping business side by side.
Hmm.
And we also had some trailers, so we've been acquiring trailers, and we try to go for unique, like color themed
Cool.
stuff. Or we got a trailer with a blue stripe, and it's got a blue fridge inside, and different things like that. Not every one of them is like that, but we also have
Yeah.
one of them that's like painted like a shipwreck scene mural on the outside of it, and it's
Neat.
shipwreck theme. We call it the shipwreck
Neat.
because Tobermory is big for scuba diving, so we kind of
Nice.
steer into that theme. Some themes have done better than others. Like in our tents, we have one called the Romantic, which I think a lot of guys are bringing their girlfriends to, and we have proposals there. If somebody wants to propose to somebody, that's their first pick. So that one does really well. I think that one did like $25,000 this year.
Wow. Amazing.
The tent
Amazing.
on a deck. I mean, the total investment on these were, the deck plus the canvas for the tent and the bed and a box that the bed sits on, which was all pretty cost effective. And, when lumber prices were really high, we were, into them for like 11 grand. Now it's less. But yeah, I'd say the tents have been probably the most lucrative in terms of an investment. There's no salvage value on a tent, really. I mean, you can sell a mattress, but I mean, so I don't love that. Like with the trailers, there is a salvage value on them. They can be resold. So I would say, generally speaking, the trailers actually don't perform as well as the tents, but we like the diversity, and we're going to keep spreading that around. We're looking at even more unique stuff. Man, I would love to build a tree house somewhere on our site.
That would be cool.
I've just been trying to work out
So fun.
how I do that, like, because I've been in building for some time and I know building code. I'm like, you can't, like, I see these tree houses. I'm like, there's just no way you got a building permit for that.
Yeah.
Like, because you don't have railings, you're up there. Like, no, they're not going to be okay with that. And then plus, how does zoning look at it when they do a zoning review and you're proposing to put something in a tree? Well, that's not a tent. That's not a campsite. How do you classify that? And maybe some of these answers just come with trying. But I probably need to reach out to some of the people who've done this and ask them. I feel like I know the answer. We just did it. Well, you're on Airbnb, like they're going to see you. And, bylaw does look at our listings. Like they did reach out to us and they're like, take this down. You're not allowed to do this. We're like, hey, we're actually a commercial property. Like this is actually commercial use. Like here's our zoning. And that went away. But they were basically trying to lump us in with all the homeowners who had to register and, had to have a license to do this. Again, going back to the zoning issue, like we are, fortunate in that context that we have, according to that zoning bylaw, we have the right to do this.
Yeah, very cool. Really neat stuff. I think some of the used mattresses that you may have, just put it underneath the tree fort or whatever, just in case to protect people from falling off.
There you go. Yeah,
right. That might have solved the problem altogether, right? So
totally.
So this is really cool stuff. I love just these different ideas, and I think that's one of the reasons why I love doing things like this, just like you do with your podcast, because you bring in these speakers like yourself and just get to learn some different strategies and what everybody's working on and doing. But, for a lot of investors that are watching this now, or even just through the recording session,
don't worry about that there. Sorry.
Yeah. So like pivoting different strategies or different, it seems like it can be very risky for them because they're so used to maybe investing in their own backyard. And you've probably seen this before. I got to be able to drive to see the place. I got to be able to look at, but can I ask you a question? Is more about, how do you calculate mitigating risk in your business? And again, you've done lots of different investment strategies. How do you mitigate risk in your business? And you referenced calculated and just checking the numbers out. Like, how do you manage this? And when you look at a different investment or business model altogether, how do you mitigate risk as you scale your business?
Well, I mean, anyone who's followed me will know my whole plan A, B, and C thing. I mean, I like my plan A to be really strong, but the less strong my plan A is, so say in the glamping business, that's, crush it with the glamping, make $1 million, eventually refinance it or sell it down the road. If that plan is not rock solid, if there's some uncertainty about that, now that means the better my plan C have to be. Plan B, might involve injecting capital. It might involve, some other sort of creative solution, or maybe we would have just expanded the camping side and gone away from glamping. Like there were different strategies we could pick. But when I'm looking at a market, like even like Cape Coral, like if my plan A is to flip and plan B is to keep and run as an Airbnb, and plan C is to, sell at a loss or sell it, or rent it and refinance it, I'm going to evaluate each strategy. I'm going to look at how viable each one is. And so if plan A works, great. How much money am I going to make? Okay. If plan A is like marginal, what's plan B look like? If that's also marginal, then I probably just shouldn't be doing that deal. But say plan A is really strong and plan B is a slightly uncomfortable situation for me where I might lose a bit of money, or I might just have a little bit of a headache for a couple of years. I'm going to consider that because I don't like my time being tied up. And then, of course, if plan C is also not good, well, I don't really have good contingencies if my strategy doesn't work out. And if I had thought like this before I invested in Ohio, and like a town that was like shrinking, like from a population standpoint, I wouldn't have bought there at all, because my only plan was to rent this out. You couldn't even sell them, like, because I was buying houses for like $12,000 to $15,000, and your closing costs are going to be a third of that selling it. So you're not going to get that money back. They're not going to go up in value. My only strategy was to rent them out. And it was, I had a property manager that was going to do everything, and I hadn't really thought through what would happen if he sort of betrayed me. I set myself up in a way that that I would have been out of luck. And it's not to say that I couldn't have restructured my approach and made it work, because it's kind of cool, buying houses for that price point and, making a cap rate of 17% or something.
That sounds good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's why I went there. But I really just didn't have great contingencies, with the student rental side of things. I would be going in to do a BRRRR, and I'd know, well, hey, if I can't sell it, I'll just refinance it and keep it, because I like these assets. I like managing these assets. It's great. So I have a good contingency. If I can't sell it, I can keep it. And then, plan C, maybe we do some sort of short-term rent, Airbnb, bedroom or something like that. I was thinking, hey, there's something there. I have a way of executing multiple contingencies here, all of which should be able to cover. I should be able to cash flow in all these situations. Just profit out and take my money out of the deal. But this is when I could buy stuff around 200 to 300, and then I was putting in another 200, but we were still at a very fully renovated house for around the 500 mark. And even better if I was around the 400 mark, because then my refinance, I'm pulling all my money out. Getting 600 valuations back then. Now that would be even higher, 800, and then the rents are like through the roof. So there were a lot of different angles that really allowed those deals to work. So when I don't see that, I'm looking to my network. What are people doing that's working?
That's good.
And as a businessman, I don't want to invent the wheel. I want to copy successful people and then, of course, put my own spin on it. But, this is a discussion about mitigating risk, and these are some of the things I do. But copying what works rather than inventing the wheel. And anytime I find myself inventing the wheel, so to speak, doing something that I know somebody else has already done, but I just don't know it, I don't want to do it. Like I want to talk to the expert. I'd rather pay them to tell me exactly what they did, so that I can just save all that time, because I don't have that time to give up. I want to, cut the curve. And then, with the equity raise thing, we're talking, okay, let's do the GPLP. Who do we know that's done that? Like, I know my mother-in-law's done it, but they're a big organization. It's tough to kind of like speak to one person that can answer all the questions. So we're talking, who else do we know? Let's take them out for lunch. So we sit down for lunch with them, and, then we speak to a lawyer, and it all stems from that. So I really leverage my network to mitigate my risk and to save me time.
I agree 100%. And great advice for those that are watching. Again, take that as a note. Like, it's really, really important. Reach out to your network, find people that have actually been doing exactly what you're considering doing, and making sure that, I hate the term pick your brain, but pick their brain in regards to better understanding how they've been able to mitigate some of the risk, do some of the strategies that you're trying to focus on. And then it helps kind of help you avoid some of the challenges and obstacles that you may face when you start to go down that road. So,
and hopefully there are people that you've added value to in some way that enjoy speaking with you. And I host an annual golf tournament with a lot of the people who I interact with regularly. We bring them out. I like to keep them close, and people I'm impressed with what they do. I want to keep them around me, and I want them to be my business friends, because we can all help build each other up and share ideas.
Love it. Great stuff. So one question, the one thing I really liked about some of the podcasts that you've done, and even some of the webinars you've done, Andrew, is really about market conditions. And so right now we're kind of dealing with some really interesting times. Obviously, interest rates are going up. We're seeing some challenges, a lot more inventory starting to hit the marketplace as well. And for a lot of people, the economy is not necessarily that great. And so there's that old saying, be fearful when others are greedy, and greedy when others are fearful. What's your kind of sense about current market conditions, the economic climate? Is this a good time to be scaling and growing your business, or not? What's your kind of initial thoughts on that? So,
yeah, I mean, that's a loaded question. It's who knows, really. The climate is one of insanity. If you've heard me speak, I mean, there's so much nonsense out there. I mean, the entire initial premise, like when they lowered the rates back when the lockdowns first happened, we're going to stimulate the economy. Well, you can't stimulate an economy, you shut down. Like, let people open their businesses, and then you'll see a stimulated economy. So it's been tough to watch. It's been a train wreck in slow motion to watch, and then to see them do what they're doing now, and basically punish the entire population of Canada for government irresponsibility. that caused this inflation is it's tough to watch. But at the end of the day, I kind of put all that out of my mind, and I really just focus on what it is I can do. And I'm a big on make money in any climate. If the market's going up, make money with the market going up. It's probably easier with the market going down to make money because of all the fear. There's less people who are willing to take risks at that time, which means there is more opportunity that's not being utilized, not being taken advantage of. So do I think that they're going to continue to raise interest rates? There's very, very much a possibility of that, especially when their own index factors in, costs of things that they're driving the cost up with their interest rates for. So, things like interest rate hikes increase housing costs, which increases the consumer price index, which make it look higher, which makes them want to increase interest rates again. So there's a little bit of a vicious cycle there. And then you've also got things like the carbon tax. Like it's almost seems contrived that it's all happening at the same time, pushing expenses higher when they've never been higher for Canadians. So what do I think of Canada going forward? I mean, I think, of course, there's opportunity here. There are some people who are going to make an insane amount of money with all this. There's a lot more people that are going to hurt with all this. But with that said, you don't need to be a victim of circumstance. You can choose to educate yourself and win no matter what the environment. And that's where your head has to be. You can't sit in fear. You're never going to do anything. And it's toxic. It's going to trickle into the rest of your life. Yeah. And that's the biggest thing. Like there's been a lot of fear mongering over the last several years. And you know what? I share some of that responsibility because I used to be sounding the alarm, especially with the lockdowns. I'm like, this is absurd. And I would, shout it from the mountaintops. And it needs to be said, don't get me wrong, but it can't be dwelled on. Yeah. And so that's where I'm at with that. Now, as far as, are we going to see more interest rate hikes? Yeah, like it very well could happen. And that means prices are probably going to come down more. Well, what does that mean? That means you got more sellers who are going to be hitting the market. They're going to see their mortgage renewal rate. They're not going to like it. They're going to say, you know what? I'm going to list it. Then you're going to have the power of sale situations, people who are starting to default on their mortgages because they can't afford the renewal. Those are going to hit the market. So there is certainly that side that's going to push supply. It's going to stimulate supply. But then we've also got the immigration situation, which is, offsetting that. So that's why it's impossible to say where this is going to land, because we don't know, are they going to keep consistent with that immigration policy or not? But what they are doing is they're eliminating the Canadian dream, so to speak, like the American dream. Why people come to Canada in the first place is for like a better chance. I'm not saying it is eliminated, but it is being hurt, because there's still people who come from India and other places with the caste system where they can't be successful. Like it was predetermined that they wouldn't be. Whereas they can come to Canada, and it doesn't matter if you come here dirt, broke, poor. If you're willing to work, the idea was you could come here and you could make it. Yeah, that's less true now, but it's still possible. And there are still people coming here who still think that way. But I have heard that applications are down, and that trend will continue as affordability keeps going away. Yeah, I agree 100% on all points, to be honest with you. I always ask, I talk a lot about this as my kids are a little bit older, but at the same time, especially in some of these markets, it's, how do they afford to buy their own house? Like in Vancouver, it's very, very difficult, where the average house, $1 million is really nothing anymore. And so how do you get started in that type of segment, right? It's a great way to create socialists. If you really can't buy a home, if you own no property, you're going to elect the politician. Not all, but a lot of people are going to choose to elect the politician that's going to give them the most free handouts. And I agree. It drives our country in a really bad direction, because the creeps that created the problem are the ones that are going to get more power because of it, which is just so backwards. And again, why I have to tune all that stuff out, because it seems politics in general to me seems so absurd that I can't even take them seriously. I don't even speak about it anymore, like on like my Instagram and stuff, because I don't want anybody paying any attention to these people. Like, you're not going to control what they're going to do. It's business interest and crony capitalism run it all, as far as I can see it. They're not representing the people. So knowing that, what can you do to improve your situation? Because if they're setting up, things to go a certain way, and that, well, steer that way. Try and catch on to that curve, and and that trend, and benefit from it. That's all we can do, as far as I can tell. Love it. And actually, this is almost perfect segue actually into kind of our next topic. Is research, actually, is market research strategy. Like, if you're looking to pivot different markets, and maybe you can share a little bit about some of the things you do
staying close to, obviously, we're talking politics in this situation,
Mhm.
but just economics just in general. And I think for a lot of people, it's a topic that is referenced a lot as like due diligence, not just in the market, but just
Mhm.
staying in tune with what's happening in the real estate environment, economic markets. But even more importantly is when you are looking at maybe a different market like Florida, how much time do you spend researching potential investment strategy or a different market before you making a pivot? And is it important to kind of stay close to it in this environment that we're dealing with today?
Yeah, I would say it is important, and I haven't invested in that many different markets to be clear. So I'm not going to be the most I'm not going to be the most inspiring response on this. But
Sure.
I look for a lot of economic diversity. Like a
Yeah.
lot of the discussions I even have on my show with the different guests is what are the different industries you have in your town? How long have those industries been there? The more different industries you have, the longer you're going to see consistent growth in a city, irrespective of all the other stuff. Like, of course, other things can happen and change that. But so a place like Toronto, for instance, think about all the different industries it has. It's really hard to hurt Toronto. Like if manufacturing goes down, you still got tech, you got
Yeah.
services, you got so many different things. Whereas if you're in a town that only has a nickel mine, what happens if the nickel mine shuts down? Or what if 70% of the jobs are with one employer? Like there are towns
Right.
that's the way it is. Those ones will typically yield a higher cap rate, sort of to compensate you for the risk you're taking by having all your eggs in one basket. Um, so I would look for stuff that's a little bit more diverse. I look for something where I can easily explain in a very simple statement why people will go there. Like Southwest Florida, who's ever not going to like warm weather, and who's ever not going to like the beautiful sunsets and the dolphins, and
Yeah.
there's all kinds of things that just people will want to go there. They've been going there forever. So is it the most diverse economy? No, but are people going to continue going there? I would find it very hard to believe that they wouldn't. I also really liked it because of relative price point. That's a big thing I talk about.
Yeah.
Looking for a place that's relatively cheaper than the rest, but offers similar amenities. In Southwest Florida, Cape Coral was my choice because it was that much cheaper than all the other markets where I could make the numbers sort of make sense. And you can kind of get, I don't want to, I guess I'll call it a budget buyer, somebody who didn't want to spend all the money to get a smaller house in Naples, but they chose, Cape Coral might be an option, or, they might have been looking somewhere nearby Sarasota and said, hey, I can get more house in Cape Coral. And I had a lot of investors follow me to Cape Coral for that reason.
Cool.
Lots were like looking elsewhere. Hey, Andrew, we're down in Florida. We're looking in Sarasota. I'm like, I'll talk to you in a week after you go to Sarasota and you ask me about Cape Coral. And so I was noticing that was happening a lot. So, I say water flows to the lowest point. As long as you've got a really great value offering that's relatively cheaper than your close competition, I think those markets tend to do well.
Yeah.
They have less to fall when you see a big crash. Typically, they don't fall as fast or as far. And then, of course, you can get in with lower exposure per house. So I really like that. I like the idea of being able to sell finished product,
Yeah.
at 500, to $600,000 rather than being at $1 million or above. So those are some of the things that I look for. If I were to just go pick another American city, it depends on what my purposes are. If I'm going to be there a long time, I'm going to be a lot more scrutinizing about what diverse industry they have, the different employers, and then I'm going to be looking for where I can basically buy and have, can I get the 1% rule? Like what can I put in? And then I would reverse engineer it. Like how if I can buy at this price point in this specific neighborhood and I can get this rent, what can I offer an investor if I wanted to attract investors? And I'm thinking larger scale.
Right.
If I'm gonna form a fund and I'm gonna raise investor capital for this, I need to be able to offer them something. I need to be able to profit, and we grow together. So that's some of the thinking, and I hope that answered your question
It did.
that I used.
Yeah. It did. So let me ask you, the one thing I think you referenced too is you were looking at property. Was it your brother-in-law that was down in Florida that found this land? Is that what it was, or your brother? Was it? I'm trying to remember who was
My
that.
brother-in-law found the camp and brought
Yeah.
that to me. Yeah, so
Love
we're
it.
invested in that together with a couple other partners.
So one of the things we hear a lot about is collaboration and maybe business partnerships. And is that something you tend to deal with? And I guess, what's your thoughts on collaboration? Do you have like a mentor or a leader that you tend to lead to? Or
Mhm.
maybe you can share a little bit about, your experience based on scaling, based on using other people's resources. And I think you referenced that earlier. And at the same time, do you partner with other individuals that are maybe better or more expertise or more experts in that specific field than yourself? So maybe you can just share on collaboration for the
Yeah.
purposes of scaling.
Yeah, I think collaboration is fantastic, and that's what we've done in our camp. We do have several people who I'm very fond of, who I learn from, and I think it's vice versa. And we grow together, and we help each other, we push each other, and I think that that's big. That we kind of sort of are each other's mentors.
Yeah,
So I love that.
me
That's a
too.
big thing. If I mean for the average person listening to this, I don't know that you can necessarily find somebody that's way above your level that's going to want to take you on as a co-pilot in their
Yeah.
endeavor. But if you come in with the money, they very well might. So yeah, I think it's great. I'm bigger on the strategic joint venture than I am on a joint venture where it's just a money partner.
Yeah.
With the caveat that if we're going bigger scale, then there's room for those investors too. But I really look at it, and I love the idea of having people in a deal where they're adding something in the actual execution of the business, in the growth of the business.
Love it, love it, love it, and fully agree with that too. So, as we kind of touch the top of the hour, I always like asking our guests this one simple question, especially for yourself. And you've been doing this for a while now. You've got lots of experience. Maybe just some final words of wisdom, maybe to our members that are, they're in their real estate investing journey. Maybe final bits of advice or tips for others that are considering scaling or pivoting their real estate business, just based on some of your past experience. What would be some final words of wisdom if they're looking to pivot or scale their business?
Yeah, I mean, you're at a big turning point right now, because the days of passive real estate investing, the way it used to be, are kind of gone. There was a time where the appreciation in the market saved a lot of people who were not
Yeah,
investing based on fundamentals. So now you have a choice of personal growth, and becoming a more active investor, and building out a business that you can eventually delegate the responsibilities of and separate yourself from. So a real estate based business is kind of where I see things going for a lot of the more serious investors, where you're operating a business of some sort, but it's backed by real estate. You might own the real estate. Like, for instance, our hospitality business. It's a business, but it's attached to real estate. That's, as times change and you need to pivot, I think, you got to be looking, am I going to go more active, or am I going to take on a different strategy?
mm,
Or am I going to go to a different market that I might not have otherwise been comfortable with? Either is
yeah,
work. So,
yeah,
so that's where your business hat goes on. Now I'm going to have to work. I'm going to have to delegate. I'm going to have to build a team, because if I try and do everything myself, it's probably not going to work. Especially if you've got kids, full-time job, all this stuff. Those people now more than ever are going to need to find a way to delegate more. So I'm hoping I'm touching on the points you wanted me to get at here,
you
Michael. But
are.
I
Yep.
really do think that it's time to change your strategy and be willing to roll up your sleeves if you want to make things work in the long run for your long time wealth. You're gonna have to take those steps, most likely, and that's just based on my observation. That's not advice. And then the other thing is really take it seriously. You need to have the now money, the medium money, and the long term money.
Oh yeah.
And for a long time, I only focused on the long term money. I was not even thinking now money. Now I'm really focused on getting the now money fully in order, and then building out the medium and long. Because if you don't have the now fully to the point where you're comfortable with it, it's going to occupy your mindset. It's going to keep you in that fear mindset, which you
Totally.
don't want to need. So that's kind of where my head's at, is just keeping those things rocking and rolling, keeping the multiple income streams coming in, so that you don't worry about losing your job. You don't worry about that,
Mhm.
because you have other sources of income.
I hope everybody just listened to that, because there was some really great nuggets there, especially the multiple streams and stuff like that, and the now money. It's such an important piece.
Mhm.
So, Andrew, absolutely amazing stuff. Thanks again for such incredible information and sharing with our group that are joining us live. Thanks for everybody that joined us live, and for those that are watching the recording as well. And again, maybe just real quickly, if people wanted to learn more about yourself, Andrew, where can they find you?
Instagram's probably the easiest, at the Andrew Hines. I think I'm on most platforms these days. But yeah, if you wanted to send me a message or something, that's probably the easiest place to reach me. And then you can search my name on any of the podcast platforms. So if you go to YouTube or Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the big ones, just type in my name and you'll find me.
Love it. Just so as a friendly note for those that are watching us through our YouTube channel as well, I've put a link directly in the description, or for those that are watching the recording, just check out Andrew Hines. He's got a great podcast. Highly, highly recommend it. And again, if you want to learn more about Andrew and just some of his great content that he's sharing, not just with us today, but just in future podcasts that he's running or even from past ones, great information. So with that being said, guys, I want to thank you guys all for joining. Andrew, thanks again for being part of this. I really appreciate it. It's been an honor. So with that being said, I just want to conclude last little bit. If you guys haven't had the opportunity to do so, please do me a little small little favor. Hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and give us that thumbs up to help us grow our Savvy Investor channel. And I'll keep you informed of upcoming YouTube lives that we'll be hosting. With that being said, I want to thank you guys all for joining us live. If you've got any questions, even if you're watching the recording, please post it in the comments. We'll make sure that we respond accordingly. So until then, guys, have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys all next week. Cheers.
Thank you.